Hi, hello, and welcome to the Cosmic Prayer. My name is Laura Topper, and I am here this week, of course, presenting the Cosmic Prayer on New Thought Media Network, this amazing global focus ministry doing so many beautiful things every single day of the week, bringing out programming and conversation and education for us to lift in our knowing of the truth of who we are and get even clearer with that within our own hearts. And as a practitioner, I know the power of prayer, especially, the prayer that we use here with religious science, science of mind, new thought. We use prayer with the intention of knowing that it's already demonstrated, and we're creating a consciousness of that demonstration within us. We're saying yes to knowing that this too is happening right now in our lives and in our minds and in our hearts with spiritual mind treatment. So each week I invite on a wonderful super guest who inspires me. And I am just fully inspired by this week's guest. I know he loves prayer because he has his own program here on New Thought Media Network, which is always directly after the Cosmic Prayer. It's called Practical Prayer. Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony is the co-founder, spiritual leader, minister, spiritual director of New Thought Philadelphia, an online ministry that is profoundly bringing prayer and meditation, practice, teaching, education, enlightenment to people all around the world. A global ministry, certainly. And of course, Reverend Bill has his own practice of spiritual coaching and helping people, assisting them in their lives to see the truth of who they are, which is what I really love. That really excites me. And Reverend Bill is the author of Practical Prayer for Best Results. And I'm really looking forward to delving into that so that we can all learn more about how to use this wonderful practice for our own lives. So I'm welcoming on here Reverend Bill. Hi, and welcome to the Cosmic Prayer.
Laura, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
It's so great that you're here. And I just was so overjoyed that there is another prayer broadcast after the Cosmic Prayer. For me, it just really filled my heart to know, yes, we're carrying on with prayer on a Monday.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you for that.
You bet. And actually, that program on New Thought Media Network is a follow-on. I started doing a podcast about almost a year ago now, and the podcast is the Practical Prayer Podcast. And so we would record it either. I started out on Zoom, and then we went to a different platform. And then after I got to know Robert Brzezinski at New Thought Media Network, he said, well, use StreamYard. It's exactly the same thing that you're using now, but for you, it's going to be free. So I said, sure. So we recorded for a couple of months on StreamYard and then said, we could, and we're basically doing this to record for the podcast. And so we take the audio files afterwards and we tidy them up and get rid of all the ums and the parts that make us seem less than brilliant, and turn that into, like, it's supposed to be a half-hour podcast. Winds up being 35 to 45 minutes because, religious scientists can't stop talking. And so what we're doing now is we said, well, we're doing this. Let's do this live as though it's like a TV talk show. And so we open it up and we do some chat back and forth with the audience through the comments and with each other, and kind of talk about what the show is about, and then we record the podcast, and then we do Q&A afterwards. So that has kind of grown organically into being a New Thought Media Network program, and so it's kind of serving two purposes. And then we still send the stuff off for post-production so that it gets... So we sound much smarter, I think, in the podcast, or less hesitant in the podcast than we do on the TV show.
Oh, well, you know what? It's all the same thing, and it's inspiring so many people to really tap into prayer and use it for their lives. And so that's what I wanted to really to find out, from you and for our viewers here, which welcome everybody if you're watching and viewing right now with Reverend Bill. What is it? What really does prayer mean for you personally?
What prayer means for me, I mean, it's a transformational tool where we're actually accessing that infinite creative power that creates everything. So that's what I'm doing when I'm praying, and what it means to me is everything. Everything that actually happens, like, according to the New Thought teaching or the Science of Mind philosophy, everything that happens first in consciousness. There's first an intention for something to happen, and that gets let loose into the creative law, and the creative law is then what creates the experience of it. Even if we think that we're pushing stuff around here on the surface of the planet, to the scientists, the law of cause and effect is if I want something to move, I push on it, that's the cause, and the effect is it moves. And in our teaching, we understand that the way prayer works, the cause is deciding that we want the thing to move. That's the cause. The first effect is that we push on the thing, and the secondary effect is that it moves. So prayer for me is a way of being involved in that big picture creative process all the time and being aware that that's what we're doing. And it takes all the limitations off because I don't need to know how to push. I don't need to know exactly how the thing is going to move once it gets pushed. I just know that it's moving.
What an incredible way of explaining it. And every week guests come on and explain it from a different perspective, and hearing the way you've just kind of relieves all of that pressure of having to do anything, although we do move our feet because we treat and move our feet divinely inspired, rather than running around like kind of, out of control, trying a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So that it just feels really, really wonderful the way that you've described that, to step back by not being part of that materialistic idea of how life works. And yet that is how many of us really believe that's how life works. It's a reprogramming, isn't it? Even to have faith in this other way, which is the way.
Well, we have five senses, and our five senses are very highly tuned to showing us what's going on in the world of effect. And we have to actually quiet our senses and quiet our minds so we could open ourselves up to what's actually cause. And the system is rigged. It's absolutely rigged to help us to live this physical experience, even though we're spiritual beings. So, and so I get it. So that's kind of the mystery of what we get to figure out and work through ourselves.
And then once if we do realize that there's another way, and it's much easier. I find myself even, I still want to behave in that way. I still want to try and make it happen. That's my habitual kind of programming of, if I look busy and if I look like I'm doing it, then it's good because I look like I'm just being busy.
The formula for practical prayer or spiritual mind treatment is 5 steps, except if the 5 steps don't work, in which case it's 7 steps, in which case if that doesn't work, then it becomes 9, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also the single step prayer, where somebody says this is the experience they want, and it's obvious to the person who's going to do the prayer. Yeah, this is good. This is done. Slam dunk deal. It doesn't require any prayer. It's already happening.
Right.
And the difference between that and having an opportunity or situation show up in our lives and say, oh, I know how to do this, they're very similar, because it's obvious. Okay, I could go into prayer and understand that in order to get my email sent out, I'm going to sit down and write the emails, or I can I just sit down and write the emails. Now, it will never hurt to do a prayer. It will never actually take any additional time. If I've got a certain amount of time to write the emails and I start with the prayer, then somehow that I don't actually understand, the rest of the emails don't take as long as they would have if I hadn't done the prayer.
Right.
But in the cases where we already know, where we have experience and understanding how the effect is going to happen, we can just roll with that and live within our 5 senses, I think.
So Ernest Holmes talks about our mental equivalent, and that by expanding or evolving into a new idea of our lives, that we can experience life in a greater and more fuller way. Do you believe that that prayer, spiritual mind treatment, is the thing that's really assisting to change our mental equivalent.
Oh, absolutely. And that's kind of the magic of an argumentative prayer. There's not going to be a change in our consciousness if we're doing a single step prayer. You know, somebody says they want something, we just know that it's going to be there. There's no change that needs to happen. But if there's any doubt, if there's any hesitation, say, well, how could that possibly be? Then the prayer becomes causative. Then the prayer is our opportunity to turn away from the circumstance and the situation
Yes.
to that infinite creative power that creates everything, that creates galaxies, and say, okay, we're gonna be on the A team now and allow that infinite creative power to create this new experience rather than me trying to figure it out.
Yes. And when did you discover prayer or science of mind, or what was your journey with this teaching? I mean, I don't mean going into the depths of it. Just what was it that caught you into the idea that this is actually amazing?
Oh, when I first got immersed into it, I grew up Protestant, United Church of Christ, going to Sunday school, and never really believed it. Did everything that I could to believe it, but like 2 weeks before I was supposed to get confirmed, I told my parents, I don't believe this, and I can't stand up and say that I believe this. And to my great surprise, my parents, who were all about doing what you set out to do, said, okay. So at age 12, I wandered into a spiritual desert, because the prayers that I'd done up until then were, now I lay me down to sleep, and praying not to die before waking up. And it just didn't seem like the sort of uplifting, fulfilling kind of thing that that I was yearning for. So I wandered around the spiritual desert for 20 years.
Wow.
And when my daughter was born, and I was in my early 30s, and we went to a Unitarian Universalist church, and that was wonderful. Great people, and amazing fellowship. We were living in Florida at the time. I noticed after a couple of years there, they didn't really talk much about God, which I thought was unusual for a church. And a friend of mine had been involved in a religious science church. This was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we were in the process of moving from Fort Lauderdale to Tampa. So I went to the church in Fort Lauderdale a couple of times. We moved to Tampa. We kind of looked around to find one that suited us. And when we did, it felt like coming home. Absolutely felt like coming home. And I found with this teaching that there were people who believed the same thing that I had believed my entire life but didn't have words for. And they not only had words for it, they had music, and they had books, and they had stories, and they had gatherings and all the rest of it. And it all just made sense. And then I started studying religious science and learned how to do spiritual mind treatment and got some amazing results really quickly.
Really?
And yeah. I mean, there's one of them, the story in the book. We were living in Tampa. We had season passes to Disney World, and figured out a way. We finagled a way to get a babysitter. I think it was on a Saturday night, so that we could actually go to Disney for dinner, to one of the restaurants at Epcot. And so after all of these machinations, we're driving down the interstate. And as it does in Florida from time to time, there is this enormous downpour. I mean, with the windshield wipers going full blast, we couldn't see the road. It was like getting to the point where, okay, this is dangerous. Now we're threatening our family. This might not be a good thing. We might just have to turn around and call it a night. And I said, wait a second. We're learning to do that spiritual mind treatment thing. Let's do a treatment. Did the treatment, and it wasn't for the rain to go away. It was for the rain to be in its perfect place and for us to be in our perfect place. And we got to So It Is, and like happens in Florida, the rain stopped instantly because the storm had swept past us. It's like, that's really interesting. And so we drove off to Epcot, and we got a great parking space because, of course, the storm had beat us through. Everybody ran. So we got the closest in parking space and wandered through, and the park had just been rinsed. There was no crowds. It was awesome. We came out from dinner, and the fireworks show was just starting.
Oh!
And so that's like, okay, we're safe and in our perfect place. And then the infinite comes along and says, oh, let me put a cherry on top of that for you.
Yeah.
And it just continues to get better. So, and I have so many stories about things like that. And it's not just about the rain going away or, fabulous jobs or cancer diagnoses, not people being in remission, but for my favorite one is the doctors coming back and apologizing. We must have gotten the initial diagnosis wrong because there is no evidence of this person ever having had that illness.
My word.
I am perfectly okay with highly trained, experienced, and well-paid medical professionals scratching their head and wondering what happened. I'm okay with that. I am absolutely okay with that. Yeah, so that's how I got introduced to this. It was in 1996. Having spent 10 years exiled in Florida, I moved down there for a job in radio, and we were trying to get back to Philadelphia. Wound up through a series of prayers, having the company that had bought the company that I was working for shut down the operation in Tampa, fire everybody except me and one other guy, and transfer me to headquarters in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
Which is where I had originally met my wife. So.
Oh, that is beautiful. This is so inspiring. I mean, for me and for those that are listening right now, if you're hearing these stories of Reverend Bill sharing the power of spiritual mind treatment, well, of practical prayer. You call it practical prayer. Why do you call it that?
As you have noticed, because you have been in the Centers for Spiritual Living, studying religious science, when people use the Ernest Holmes language, people like you who are trained and been around for a while understand what's going on. But if you imagine a practitioner or two people who have been around the community for a long time and somebody who's like listening in over their shoulder and it's their first visit, and one of them is saying to her friend, oh yes, I was having such an issue, so I went to a practitioner, I got a spiritual mind treatment, and I manifested a demonstration. Her friend says, that's wonderful. The newcomer says, what the hell are you talking about? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? So I took the opportunity that was afforded me by being in an independent New Thought or religious science community to relanguage that. So instead of saying we're going to get a spiritual mind treatment to manifest a demonstration, we're going to do a practical prayer to get a real result. Right. And it's the same process. It's the same 5 steps or 7 steps. And we explain why sometimes you need to go to 7 steps.
Yes,
and that's really clear as well. And we didn't number the steps. Because when you number the steps, step 4 is the gratitude step. Except if you didn't believe the prayer, in which case step 4 is the refutation step. So my partner is a graphic designer, and he came up with icons to denote each of the steps. So we can go through, and if you can do it, the prayer in 1 step, then you do the prayer in 1 step, and it's a done deal. And if you can't do it in 1, then you do it in 5. And if you get to if you get through your affirmation, your realization step, and you don't believe it, then the divine will tell you that you don't believe it, in which case you do it. You add another 2.
So could you just open up on those other 2?
Yep.
What? Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
And depending on which flavor of religious science somebody studied in, there's either the actual 2 steps are included, or the 2 steps are implied. So the first thing that happens, and I'll go through all of them because if I start on step 3, then people are going to go, wait, what? So the first thing we do in a practical prayer, actually the 0th thing that we do before we start the prayer, is we state our intention. Here's the result. Here's the experience that I want to have once this prayer has worked. So if there's somebody, for example, who is experiencing loneliness and wants a relationship, then instead of saying, I don't want to be lonely anymore, which is a prayer for what you don't want, it's like, okay, once you're not lonely anymore, what's the experience? I want to have a perfect, wonderful, loving relationship. Okay, so that's going to be the prayer. So now we know what the prayer is about. So the first step in the prayer is the recognition, where we recognize that quality that we are wishing to experience ourselves already exists in the divine. God is. And in this case, because it's a prayer about relationships, God is love. God is wholeness. God is connection. God is that divine power and presence that shares itself as everything and as everyone. That's a big picture. And it's not hard to understand that that's possible because it's God. Yeah. And I can go into details about my explanation or understanding of God, whether we take it from Scripture or from intuition or from quantum physics. It's all the same story. So there's this one infinite creative power that has created everything. Second step, since it created everything, it created me. I am that same divine power and presence. I am God's love made real as me right here and right now. And so is the perfect person who I am, who's going to be having this wonderful, loving relationship with me. So we're putting ourselves in the context that we are all that divine presence unfolding in our own way. And the third step is the realization, the affirmation step. I have my perfect, loving relationship unfolding in bliss and joy and happiness and whatever adjectives we want to use. And the next thing we do is we go to the gratitude step. I'm so grateful for this wonderful relationship. And then we release, and so it is. And what happens is when we get done with the affirmation, I have my perfect, wonderful, loving relationship. And a little voice in the back of our head says, yeah, but you don't have anything to do on Saturday night.
Right.
That is our subconscious telling us that we don't believe what we just claimed. And if we happily go on and close out the prayer, then what will happen is we'll get the experience that we believe rather than the one that we were claiming.
Okay.
So the practical prayer being causative, creating something new in experience, is also diagnostic, because we are setting a new idea into that infinite mind. And when we get a yeah but, when we get pushback, when we get when something in our mind says, everybody thinks your breath smells, nobody would want to have a relationship with me or you, or whatever the noises are that go that committee in our heads make. That's an indicator that we don't believe what we just claimed, at which point we get to refute it. The idea that everything is God's love except me, that this good is possible everywhere except for me.
Right.
The thought that there's nobody who could possibly love me is not true. It can't be true. This is an infinite universe. This is an infinite creative power that can create everything. It's love itself. So I know that that love is creating that perfect, loving relationship for me right now. And the next step after we do the refutation, we turn away from what's not true, is we repeat our affirmation and claim the good that we were claiming before we got the yeah but. So this perfect loving relationship is on its way now, and then we continue with the gratitude and the release, unless we get another yeah but, in which case we cycle through again.
And we keep going. Mm-hmm. So this is different to an argumentative prayer or a spiritual mind treatment where we may use the argumentative technique in the realization process, because we're going past the realization, giving gratitude, and then it's like, oh, actually, well, I don't quite.
It's the same process you're talking about. It happens before you get to the gratitude step. When I do my realization step and my subconscious says, yeah, but, or I get some doubt, or whatever my signal happens to be, that's the indicator that I have some work to do.
Okay.
And I need to clear out that disbelief.
Okay.
And we just labeled the step.
Yes. And this is beautiful because it's giving us another opportunity to question our own faith as well in the divine, in the midst of the prayer.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be. We can use it to create a new experience, and we can use it to determine what it is that we actually believe. Although there's a really powerful tool for determining what's in your belief system.
Okay, would you like to share that, please, Reverend?
Yeah, look at your life. Your life is a topographical map of your belief system. Yeah, that's it. It's a life-size topographical map of your beliefs.
And yet we can look at our lives and still feel good. We can still feel amazing and excited and prosperous within, even if the demonstration yet has not occurred of what it is we would truly desire. Mm-hmm. Keeping our frequency lifted, staying above the line, if you like, and knowing that all is possible and I'm not guided by what I'm seeing.
Right.
I'm guided by...
And if you take yourself back to when you first started in this teaching, there were some things that you prayed for that seemed like they were pretty big, and then they started happening in your life, and you don't really think about them anymore.
That's true.
Okay, well, this is, the same instructions apply for a spiritual practice and practical prayer as they do, as they're indicated on the shampoo bottle, which is lather, rinse, repeat. Yes. And as we continue to do this, we continue to unfold and continue to grow and continue to expand. And the things that used to be the problem in the past are now the foundation of where we're starting in the future.
Yes. And even if those things that were the problem in the past, in the future, or in the present, don't feel like they're that much of a problem anymore because we expand in our own consciousness, the container.
Right.
So those things then, okay, I'm moving on to something different.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily
Yeah.
that we get done and there's suddenly no more
Right.
problems. There's
Right.
always the best things that ever happened to us and the worst things that happened to us, and everybody's just got a different scale. You know,
Yes.
I can have a really good day or a really bad day, and you know what? My really worst day is much better than the day that somebody in Ukraine is having for the most part.
Yes. Yes.
And just to keep that in perspective, and they have the opportunity; their lives are going to get better
Yes.
to the point where that
And
becomes a story. You remember back when?
yes. And the most amazing thing I'm really inspired by is that now in the Ukraine, we have practitioners who are, fully licensed, and they're there, and they licensed at the beginning of this year. And so their consciousness is really high. They're knowing the truth, and they're putting all of this into practice in their lives and for the lives of others, which is
Mm-hmm.
powerful that they're there and they licensed before this happened, before this disruption happened. Isn't that incredible? These teachings
It's,
are placed where they need to be.
yeah, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
so powerful. Not sure, I'm not sure the how, but that's none of my business. How is none of my
Yes.
business.
So what do you say, Reverend Bill, to somebody, myself included, and maybe some of the viewers that are watching who will bring them in a second. So if we get stuck on the how, because that's a place where for me sometimes it's like, oh, I want to do it myself. I want to make this happen faster.
Well, first of all, the thought that I can create something bigger or faster than the power that creates galaxies is
Yes.
a little
Slightly
it's a little bit
absurd.
arrogant.
Yeah.
And it's what I remember back. I take myself back to fundamentals, and the tongue-in-cheek way of saying is, I know what God's first name is. God's first name is Howard. Okay, our Father who art in heaven,
Right.
hallowed be thy name. Right, and so that's the tongue-in-cheek way. But God actually is the how word. God is going to.
Oh, the
God does
how
the how.
word.
The how
The how
word.
word. I
Yeah.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
So I am perfectly comfortable saying God knows how this is going to work, because that's not said in exasperation. That's said in
Yeah.
absolute sure confidence. God knows how this is going to work. Here's what it's going to look like, or here's more importantly, this is what it's going to feel like when it's done. This is the tone and texture of the experience that I intend to be having once this new experience has come about. And once I know the what, I turn over the how. It's none of my business. I open myself up to the guidance, what is mine to do, and the rest of it is mine to let go of. And if I try and figure out the how, then it is completely possible that as God is arranging these pieces, I'm grabbing one of them. And it's like, I have to
Right.
start over again. And of course, God has infinite patience. So I can mess up the unfolding as often as I want to. And
Okay.
once I get out of the way and understand, okay, I'm not supposed to grab that one, but I am supposed to go off and feed the homeless for a little while so that this can percolate. And when I come back, it's all done. So
Yes.
God knows how.
Yes. Thank you so much for explaining it like that, because it can be very frustrating when an answered prayer takes a while to answer in our physical manifestation in the world of form. And
There are
for
times when
me,
I have gotten very impatient, wanting the prayers to demonstrate immediately, wanting the results right
yeah,
now. And
yeah,
as often as not, once I do get the result that I was hoping for, or looking for, or intending, or inviting, I understand what the delay was about.
right.
Most of the time, it's because I wasn't ready.
Yes.
You
And
know,
couldn't have handled it on some level. Or that there are many pieces and strands that are needing to synchronize and come together, and situations and all sorts of things that happen in divine timing that in our humanness can't see,
oh yeah,
because yeah.
that wonderful job that I wanted that wound up taking 2 years longer to get, and then realizing if I had gotten it 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been prepared for it. I would
Right.
have completely cratered in that job. It would not have worked for me. So it was actually what I learned in those 2 years of doing the work and trudging along and opening myself up to different possibilities. That was the transformation. I changed.
Yes. And that's the key, I think, for me. What I've learned through this process or through this adventure of using spiritual mind treatment for myself is that I'm the one I'm transforming. And I need to learn this in order for this to happen. I need to open up to this new way, a new way of thinking or a new way of being in order for it to happen. And then that grows me as an individual.
Right.
And that excites me.
Yeah.
That piece really excites me.
Yeah. Well, our belief system has edges to it. So there's stuff that's like right inside of our belief system. We absolutely believe it, and it's the sort of things that happen to us all the time. And then there's some stuff out on the edges where sometimes it really works and sometimes it really doesn't. And then out beyond that is, and by the way, that's our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Out beyond our comfort zone is our scary zone, and unfortunately, that's where almost all of our work and our growth happens.
Right.
So if I'm comfortable with the experience that I've been having up until now, I can probably keep doing what I've been doing. And if I want to have a different experience, then I need to be willing to change something.
Yes.
And that's scary. Okay.
Yes.
So am I
It
ready to go?
certainly is. And then often we're pushed into that anyway.
Yeah.
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 That can be even scarier, but it's like, wake up, come on now, it's time.
Oh, yes. I have been pushed into circumstances and situations completely against my will of things that I did not
Oh,
at the time
yes.
like, did not like at all, and that felt like I was being punished for it. And it's only in long hindsight that I understand where the gift was.
Right.
Damn it.
Oh, this is exciting. Reverend Bill Marchiony is here, co-founder and spiritual leader, spiritual director from New Thought Philadelphia. And we have people on the line here. I know it's taken a while for me to get to you. And we're here. I want to bring you in. We have CSL Geneva contacting here. Fiona, wonderful Fiona. Salutations from Geneva and looking forward to the discussion. Yes, if you have any questions, Fiona, please feel free to pop them into the comments. And if you have any questions for Reverend Bill, that would be amazing. And Wayne is here. Hello, Wayne. Fired with enthusiasm. We always are. I am. And here on New Thought Media, we are too, definitely. And oh, Fiona, we've had Diego is here. Hi, Diego.
Good to see you, Diego.
Wonderful. Oh, beautiful Diego, our fantastic head of production here on the network, who I don't know how we would manage without Diego doing so many beautiful things to empower the production of all of these shows. And then we have Bonnie. Yes, Bonnie Gonzalez, your doula for grief. Who is saying that she has enjoyed watching your podcasts here on New Thought Media Network with your partner, Carol Lawrence. Yes, they are. Let's talk about this podcast, because I've watched it and it's actually on after this every week at so that would make it at 11 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time. That's when it broadcasts here on New Thought Media Network. Yep. And it's also available on your own platforms through your ministry too.
Right. It's a podcast. So it's on Apple and Google and Stitcher and Spotify and whatever. Yeah. So it's around. And I mentioned before that I was on the radio. So I had a career in radio for 10 years. And
wow. Okay.
I was a zany morning show personality. So my job was basically writing jokes and making fun of people between the records. And that was in the 80s and 90s. And I got into ministry. And of course, every step along the way has been a gift. So people told me, oh, you should do a podcast. And it's like, podcast. What am I going to do a podcast about? And tried a couple of times, one doing a music and talk kind of thing, playing New Thought music and then doing a message between them, but it kept on sounding a little weird to have a minister sounding like a top 40 DJ. So
You're
it
here
was
on New Thought Media Network, so that would be fine here.
it could work. And then I did one. My daughter is also in broadcasting, and she grew up in this teaching, and so she and I did the show together. The problem was, even though she was playing the part of the cynic, and she has turned into quite a cynic, she at her core believes everything about the teaching, so she couldn't really ask good questions. And then I
Right.
met Carol. And Carol spent 35 years on the pulpit in 3 different Christian ministries. And so we started doing the podcast together. And she found me because she was looking apparently for a mentor or somebody who knows the teaching, who has skin on it, because she'd read a lot of books and was channeling her inner Neville and stuff like that. And so that's how we connected. And she started taking classes with me, and she asked really good questions. So I said, would you do the
Yes.
podcast with me? Because she also has a background in radio. And so I think the first episode, she says, so what's the difference between a practical prayer and a regular prayer? And I realized I don't really know anything about anything other than practical prayer. So you tell me what makes
Okay.
a prayer a regular prayer, and then we'll talk about what the difference is. And so I have been learning from her all the way along about traditional religion.
Yeah.
And along the way, it has informed for me just how special all of New Thought is. And it doesn't matter whether we're religious scientists or divine scientists or following Unity or United Foundation for Better Living or Swedenborgian or whatever. It doesn't make any difference. We are all so close together compared to where everybody else is that, it's, I'm in Philadelphia. And when I meet somebody else in Philadelphia, I say, what neighborhood? Because there are 40 neighborhoods in Philadelphia. But you're in the UK. I say Philadelphia, you know where I am. We don't need to go into any further detail. We're all in Philadelphia, or we're all in Sussex, or wherever it is
Yeah.
we happen to be. We've got our location. Everything else is way thousands and thousands of miles away. The big difference for New Thought is that we believe there is one creative power that creates everything that has created each of us. It is a unity teaching. There is not God out there and us down
Yeah.
here. There is not God over there fighting with the devil over there. There's not a hierarchy where in order to get to God, we have to ask the angels, or we have to ask Jesus, or we have to ask somebody else to please do us a favor and ask God if he can send something our way, and then wait patiently, not knowing whether or not we deserve it. We all believe that we are creating our experience according to our beliefs, and we have some nuance and difference about the way that we do it. And
Yes.
And that's the realization that Carol brought me to. Is like, okay, we are so different that, yeah, let's just talk about the differences. And every week on the podcast, she comes up with a really simple question. We spend a half an hour talking about it.
And what I really love your chemistry together, because she's I watch her and she has a quiet confidence about herself and the way that she brings her questions forward and she talks, and it feels like it's kind of like you're both mentoring each other as you're
Very
doing
much.
this, and then the topic is the topic's coming through as the teacher here. And I love that she comes from roots are in Christianity, and it's really highlighting the difference between the prayer formula that we use and that begging and beseeching.
Yeah. And Carol uses the term traditional religion, and because it's not just Christianity, because all the traditional religions have that commonality of God up in the sky or out there someplace, a distant
Yeah.
entity that that we can have a relationship with and we can ask something of, and the answer could be yes, or it could be no, or it could be you don't deserve it, or it could be wait. And that's the difference. Is that we know that when the request is made properly, the answer is always yes.
Yes. So the key then is to learn how to ask, or not ask. No, that's not the right word. That's not. Is to learn how to have the faith, is to deepen our faith in what we're doing as we're using this tool, as we're praying, as we're using spiritual mind treatment or practical prayer. Because Ernest Holmes talks about, the conviction and the warmth, connecting with the feeling, rather than it being just about the words that we're that we're stating in the creative law. And do you believe that too, that if we have that connection and the feeling, even if we believe it, but we don't have that connection, then the prayer cannot demonstrate as quickly or as fully?
Yeah, we call it bringing the fire.
Yeah.
I'm teaching. We're finishing up a practitioner class, and we can tell. It's very clear when a practitioner is bringing the fire, when they're feeling it, and it's really lighting them up. There are other times where somebody can say all of the right words and not have nearly that level of passion. And what's going to happen is the experience that they get will be one at the level of the energy that they're bringing to it.
Right.
So, and it also has to do with our level of belief or disbelief. When I'm doing a prayer for something that I absolutely believe is possible, then just bringing my attention to it and putting it into the word, that'll do it. There are times when there's some doubt. That's when I really want to bring the fire to overcome whatever my sense of doubt was. Yes, this good is happening now.
So the prayer as an entity is also a mirror of our own consciousness, our own belief in it, our own faith in it, in the demonstration and in what we're doing, and our own connection to how we're feeling about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is done unto you as you believe.
Yes.
And
all the way through with
absolutely.
everything. Yes.
No question whatsoever.
Yes. Oh, this is amazing. What a great conversation. If anybody here has any questions, any comments, please pop them in. We have Janice here, Janice Morel. So grateful for these deep dive prayer conversations. Loving all the emojis. Janice, thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, then do pop them in. This is a really interesting conversation. Can you give any examples of when a prayer for you, you've kind of kept going with the same prayer and it hasn't demonstrated, and it's because that you're not in that place of the feeling, the feeling tone?
Yeah, and I'm not even going to say this because I wasn't in the space of the feeling tone. It's because I had too much doubt and hesitation about it.
Okay.
And before I do that, I'm going to shill for my class and my book. The book is Practical Prayer for Real Results, which is on Amazon. You can do it on Kindle, and it's got an audio book which sounds remarkably like me talking. And I also do a practical prayer workshop, which when we're in person is a Saturday afternoon. It goes from, it's like 4.5 hours. And we get together and we talk about prayer in other religions and other traditions and what our belief systems are. And it's a whole process moving through that. And since COVID happened, we have turned that into an online 1 hour, once a week for 5 weeks session. And I got another session.
When is it?
It is starting, and these are always on the website at bethelight.com, which is b-the-light.com. And
okay.
The next session is starting. I'm going to check my calendar to make sure because we just moved it. And I want to move it away from where I'm going to see it. Yes, it starts on the 12th of May, and it's from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we broke it into 5 sessions. And the way the process works is we go through the history of prayer and why practical prayer works, and then the importance of each of the steps in a practical prayer. And we construct a practical prayer for each person who's there through the process in the first 4 sessions. And then the final session is an interactive musical process where we actually get to embody it. And we've done it when we do it live in person, we sometimes have a live musician. We've done it with recorded music. And now that we're online, I've got some of the best musicians in the world who are doing that last session with us. So we're starting on the 12th of May, and then 5 weeks later, the last session has live music by Amy Steinberg. And so, spectacular.
Oh, amazing. We'll come and give you some music. I'm
Perfect.
A musician.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And I've done it with Daniel Nahmod, and we've done it with local musicians, and it's an absolute blast. And people who have experience with practical prayer can just take the last session, because you bring your prayer in, and then we dive into it together in that really powerful container of spiritual energy. So
Oh,
yeah, that
that's so
stuff is.
exciting. So have I got the right address? BeTheLight.com.
Be the Light has hyphens in it.
Have,
It's be-the-light.com. And that
okay, I'm going
class,
to put the hyphens in, and that's where
yeah,
people can sign up for the class.
yep. And they can also sign up. You can also find the class on the New Thought Philly website, newthoughtphilly.org. That stuff is all posted there as well. And hopefully the class dates are posted properly on the Be the Light site now, because I'm also the webmaster.
Fabulous. That's really, really, really great that you're doing this. You're teaching this process or this way, so people can in with your class and bringing music in with it. And I love that, because we're all about music. Science of mind, religious science, new thought, whatever whatever strand of new thought we're into. Music is the most wonderful way, I believe, for to embody a message in our heart and in our mind, and
Yeah.
embody that truth, the affirmations into our hearts and minds.
Yeah, now I did want to. I
Yes.
wasn't ducking your question. Like, what was a prayer that I worked on for a long time and it just wasn't happening. And when I was a teenager, I was very seriously overweight. I weighed probably 325 pounds from my teenage years, probably until I was 28. Got married when I was 28, and in the first year after we got married, my wife, who was also overweight, lost a bunch of weight. So I dropped 110 pounds or something. And then over the years, the weight would fluctuate up and down a little bit. And it was always a frustration. Our foundational class is Beyond Limits. And so every time we teach Beyond Limits, there's one of the ones is a health exercise. And I would write down, this is the experience that I want to have in my physical body about being comfortable, and this is the weight that I'm looking for. And then finally, and obviously all the prayer work that I was doing on that, and there was some resistance going on, some disbelief in all of that, because it wasn't happening the way that I wanted it to be happening. And then I'm going to say it's in 2018, I finally got myself clear. No, now is the time, and it all just worked, and my weight dropped by like 45, 50 pounds, and it stayed that way since then. A little bit of up and down, but it's not having the same cycles that it had before. And clearly what happened is I cleared it. It's not like an answered prayer. I still did the work. I still went on the keto diet, which, by the way, I had done before.
Right.
And
I was going to ask you that.
And for me, it's about working, as long as it's a workable program. If you work the program will work. And all the same programs had been available, and I've been on lots of those things before.
Right.
Weight Watchers and Nutrisystem and Medifast and this one and that one. And they all work to an extent, right up until they don't. And the fact of the matter is, I am wearing clothes that feel comfortable and fit me now. And not just fit my body, but fit my personality. This is the physical experience that I'm looking for. So in that sense, I was able to clear those issues.
That's incredible. So there was something within you that was holding you back. You were holding
Had to be.
yourself back.
Yeah, some disbelief.
And it was clearing that pattern, programming, belief, whatever it is you want to call it, so that you could be free to experience life the way you.
Yep. So, and a couple of other wonderful things that have happened for me, and it's since the pandemic. In addition to New Thought Philadelphia, I'm also on the board of directors for the affiliated New Thought Network, and we just did a virtual retreat on Friday, which was 9.5 hours, and it was world-class speakers and an all-star concert and a wonderful opportunity to connect people together. There were a couple hundred people, and that was live streamed on New Thought Media Network. Thanks again to Robert and the crew for making that happen. And we get to have an in-person retreat in October at Unity Village. I'm also on the executive board and one of the on the Congress committee for the International New Thought Alliance. And really exciting, something that's happening that I've been passionate about for years, is at the 107th Annual World Congress of the INTA, which is in Chicago at Christ Universal Temple in July. We're bringing together the leaders of all of the major New Thought organizations. So we're
Oh,
going to
fantastic.
yeah, so Edward Vilhoon and Sunday Cote from CSL, and Shad Groverland and Jim Blake from Unity, and Darrell Watkins and the others from Divine Science, and Sheila McKeithen from Universal Foundation of Better Living, and Michael Beckwith from Agape, and Barbara Fields from the Association for Global New Thought. And we're going to do a roundtable and talk about what we have in common and what we have to offer each other. And this is a coming together of new thought, which is just exhilarates me. It is exhilarating.
This is so powerful because, I'm sorry, carry on. There was a bit of lag there, that's why.
This is spectacular. And since the honorary committee got together for the first time in February, they have realized that the Parliament of World Religions is the following year in Chicago. It's going to be in August of 2023. And those guys on their own have already gotten together to put together how New Thought is going to appear as one at the Parliament. Because we'd been there before, but it's like, they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and we're going to do the others, and kind of dance around each other. But like, we're now owning the fact that we are, all the children of Ralph Waldo Emerson and Thomas Troward and Phineas Quimby, and let's move that forward.
And that had to happen. This has to happen because we're all praying all the time for the knowing of, we know oneness. We know that we are one. We know that we are whole, perfect, and complete. I know I'm, and that is what I believe, and that is what I say. And I know that in this this philosophy and in this movement as a whole, we're all saying it all the time. And so it's a beautiful demonstration
it's
of
wonderful
that
to see it happen.
unfolding. It's really powerful. Oh, Reverend Bill, thank you so much for being here today and for shining your light. And I know you have your podcast here in 7 minutes time. So we're going to just kind of wrap this up for today. And I want to put your details up. Oh, they're still here. Reverend Bill Marchiony, Doctor of Divinity, and your book Practical Prayer for Real Results is on Amazon. Please, if you're watching right now, you can go into Amazon and have a look at it, and have a look at the website, which is newthoughtphiladelphia.org.
Yep.
Yes, newthoughtphilly.org, which I need to put that in as well.
Yeah. And I just want to mention one more time that we do a community meditation twice a day, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern Time weekdays, and there's a couple of times on weekends as well. Anybody is welcome to join us. Our community spans everyone everywhere. So if somebody wants to drop in just for the first time and see what it's about, you're welcome to do it. I have that top 40 radio background, so these things never last more than 15 minutes, and sometimes they're 8 or 10. So it doesn't take a huge chunk of time, but it's a wonderful opportunity to get connected with other people who understand the same sort of thing. And just we set an intention and we go into a meditation and a prayer, and it's a really powerful way to connect.
Fantastic. And can people connect through newthoughtphilly.org, through your website? Is that how they access the link for that?
Yes. Yeah. All the information on all the stuff that I do is at newthoughtphilly.org, including my contact information. So you can email me or message me up or all that stuff.
Great. I was going to ask that. If anybody wants to connect with you, then please go to the website and check that out, and email Reverend Dr. Bill from there. And thank you for being here today. Thank you for shining your light and for empowering and educating us even more deeply on what prayer is and how we can use it practically.
You are welcome, and thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Oh, would you like to share a prayer with me for a couple of minutes before we exit the program today and go into the new? And for anyone that's watching, stay here after this broadcast, because you're going to get another dose of Reverend Bill practically praying with Carol on their program Practical Prayer, which happens in about 4 or 5 minutes time. So stay tuned into New Thought Media Network.
So you'd like me to pray us out this evening?
Yes, I'd love you to. I'm gonna start it now, so we can close our eyes right now and just connect and know that, yes, the purpose of this prayer right now is, well, for me, it's gratitude. Knowing that we are here as one in the light, as the light of love. And so I know that as I recognize this one power and presence that is moving and living and breathing through me, through everything, as that perfection, wholeness, completeness that always has been here and always will be here, of course, and it is here, right here in the now, in the here and now, doing its thing, experiencing itself as this life, creative experience. And so as I recognize this, I know that I'm united as this, and I open up to knowing that even more fully in my heart that this thing itself is living and breathing and having its experience through me, through Reverend Bill, through each of us watching, through Thought Media Network, through all of life, through every sentient being on this planet and beyond. And I recognize and I unite and I know the greatness of this, that we are one. And so I pass this prayer over to Reverend Bill.
And I continue in the awareness of this oneness, knowing that that one infinite creative power that creates everything has created me, has created Laura, has created everyone who is within the sound of my voice. Each of us, a unique expression of God's infinite goodness expressed in our own way. And I know that the highest and best that we can imagine is unfolding in our lives right now, in all sorts of different areas. It's different for each of us. It's unique for all of us. And yet, good and more good is unfolding into our lives and into the world. It takes nothing away from anyone. It diminishes no one. It is the opportunity for that divine power and presence to reveal itself afresh. So I'm grateful for the good in all the different ways that it's showing up. I'm grateful for the experience and the even more rock-solid belief in the oneness. I'm grateful for the wonderful way that this is unfolding for each of us. And so with gratitude for this good, I speak this word of invitation, of opening, of intention, and I release it into that creative law that has been saying yes since the beginning of time. That same law that always says yes is saying yes now. This good is underway. And so it is. Amen.
And so it is. And so it is. Thank you so much, Reverend Bill, for being here today.
Thank you, Laura. I'm going to go jump into the other studio so that Carol and I can do
jump into another
pre-show.
Studio. Absolutely. And I'll meet you backstage.
Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for watching. See you next time on the program.